the fall of '79, a brief handshake and meeting at the Van Wezel in Sarasota, Florida, prior to the election of Ronald Reagan. I shook hands with him, and my wife shook hands with his wife, Nancy. And I said, "You don't believe in government. Why are you running?" And I was a Republican at the time. He had a wax mask on his face that at the edges were literally 1/8 of an inch thick. You could see that they plastered this mask on him. And he was tall, but his shoulders looked 5 feet wide, so that when you saw him standing, you had the feeling of Superman, the way he was dressed. So when he went on the stage at the Van Wezel, big stage, the light shone upon him. He looked magnificent, but that wax mask was 1/4 of an inch thick, and the hair was full of whatever, glue, you name it, to make it perfect, and like it was planted, like it was a wig. It was probably his real hair, just that it was so coated and so forth, and he was almost a cartoon character, like from Mad Magazine. And that's why I do believe people on Mad Magazine used his face to make a cartoon out of it. But he said government's a problem, not the solution. And that's what he left America with, beginning of a debt path that we had a hell of a time avoiding or getting away from ever since. Prior to Reagan, there was very little debt. When terrible things happened and Jimmy Carter lost the presidency to him, he left less than $1 trillion. We're talking about spending time right now of several trillions of dollars to rebuild the infrastructure of this country, something that Reagan threw away. First thing he did was he told the corporations, go overseas, we'll get a tax write-off for you. Hire your cheap labor overseas, and I'll see to it that unions are destroyed. First thing he did when he became president, or one of the first things, he fired the air controllers, which could control all the flights and so forth. Kind of a dangerous thing to do, but they had to completely redesign the takeoff of planes coming into to airports, and it became very difficult to travel in those days, because I was commuting back and forth between Central Illinois and Florida every 10 or 15 days. I had a business up there. Nonetheless, I had no regard for Ronald Reagan. I voted in the primary. The last time I voted as a Republican was for George Bush Sr., who I had some regard for. He was ex-military. With things about him I liked. As a Republican, I felt that he was fiscally responsible, and he somewhat followed the ideals of Nixon, who had problems but believed in government. George Bush Sr. believed in government, at least at that time, up to that time. And you don't defund government to make money for a few wealthy people, like the Trump tax cut was all about. It cost us, I think, between $7 and $8 trillion of unrecovered money. Not recover that money. We're about to deal with a debt ceiling crash that the Democrats have to pay for, that credit card that Trump built up before he left office. You know, Trump left us in a big bunch of messes. We went from number one in exports of grain, that's soybean, corn, and so forth, to China mostly. We lost a lot of that export to Brazil. So anyway, Reagan created this situation, and then Trump amplified like nobody else on what Reagan had done. I blame the creation of Trump on the beginning of Ronald Reagan. And on the grain matter, Illinois and all the central states rely on grain. But when Brazil said, we'll grow the soybeans, we'll grow the corn, we'll tear down the rainforest, we'll do that, even if it kills the earth, we'll do that to get the sales away from America. And America went from number one in grain exports to number four, where we are today, 4 years later. That's a big loss. That's $500 billion in sales that we lost. We cut it probably by 2/3 in those sales. We had to find other sources for our products. So we lost a lot. A lot of farmers went insane and committed suicide. Big bunch of small farmers. And big farmers came in and bought up their properties. So the benefit went to large ag, and even they haven't recovered from the mess. So Reagan did a lot of terrible things. And he basically preached the idea of defunding government, to take away Social Security, to take away Medicare, to take away things for ordinary people. There's other stories to tell about Ronald Reagan. I know some, but we'll stop right there right now. Thank you.